What are the expectations for LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier heading to the 2025 collegiate football season? Ladies and gentlemen, we are ramping up our college football coverage, and today we're going to talk about Garrett Nussmeier. We're going to watch two videos, one from Greg McElroy and one from Pro Football Focus's college football show. So Nussmeier is in the conversation as one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He's up there with Drew Aller. He's up there with Cade Klubnik. Certainly in the convo, okay? Now, the question is, for LSU fans, how good can he be? Can he be a Heisman-level player? Can he take LSU to the next level? For maybe just general Saints fans, it's, well, if the Saints are bad and have the opportunity to draft Garrett Nussmeier, should they? Now, two players I want you to think about when it comes to Garrett Nussmeier is Baker Mayfield, okay, Tony Romo. Whenever I watch him play, those are two guys who I constantly see. His throwing motion reminds me so much of Tony Romo, and his play style reminds me so much of Baker Mayfield. And we'll probably see that if they show some of these highlights. So let's go ahead and crank up the video.
At number 5, it's LSU starting quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. He had an amazing 2024 campaign, went for over 4,000 yards, 29-12 touchdown interception ratio, and 64% completion.
Like, that's Romo.
I think kind of amazing that Garrett Nussmeier is still in many ways kind of flying under the radar. Like, I feel like he's a guy that had such a great year last year, but people have pointed to some of the mistakes that were made, like the interception thrown against.
Yeah, I mean, his issues are interceptions, turnover plays, taking sacks.
A&M. People have kind of focused on the negative. Well, I look at Nussmeier and I look at some of those interceptions. Yeah, he's a gunslinger. Like, he takes chances with the football. Like, sometimes, yeah, does it concern me how often he's willing to roll the dice and try to fit
that right
in
there? I mean, guys, like, that right there is the exact same as Tony Romo. That rollout, even the way he delivers the ball, the way the ball comes out of his hand. What I think Nussmeier needs to do is he needs to lose some of that gunslinger mentality, because I don't think he has the arm to be a Brett Favre tried and true gunslinger. And I think he needs to mold himself more into that Tony Romo style of, yeah, like, he still will take the chances. Yeah, he'll still spin the pill, but he's not trying to beat the defenders by forcing it in these tight windows. I don't think he has the arm strength to do that. You know, Baker kind of gets in trouble because he plays like that, or he did play like that when he's not that player, right? So that's maybe the step that I would want to see Nussmeier take this year, is a little bit, I mean, I guess in college you can get away with it depending on who you're playing, but long term, I don't see him as Brett Favre. You know, I see him more of this, like, cerebral kind of Romo-esque player who at times, like, yeah, okay, at times you are spinning the pill, and you are kind of a swashbuckler, if you will.
small window, yeah, maybe. But at the same time, like, he pulls it off more than most. And I think that he is in a really good position to go along with the weapons that they've now added. You already have Aaron Anderson, but Nick Anderson, I think you got some guys that can play on the perimeter. I like their personnel at tight end. I think, I'm hopeful that LSU will take some of the pressure off Garrett Nussmeier this year, because they didn't run the ball hardly at all last year, partly because they didn't have amazing depth at running back. But I think that this is a great spot for Garrett Nussmeier to be in. Now, are there areas where I would like to see him improve? Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to see him be quite as aggressive. I think understanding what the situation requires.
Those are really hard throws. Like, those are throws that you see in college all the time when the ball's fluttering around. And, you know, I've been maybe harshly critical, I guess, at times of certain quarterbacks, but in that throw, that style of throw, like, if I see this throw from a college quarterback and the ball is fluttering, I pretty much just take him off the board. I just kind of take him off the draft board, because if you can't make this throw in the NFL, you don't have a chance. And this is not easy, right? This is a Josh Allen type situation where it's like, put it on him, get it out there quick, you know, throw it through them.
Situation requires.
And, you know, I think those two throws that they just showed from Garrett are okay.
Understanding what the situation requires would be somewhat helpful.
Again, it's not Josh Allen levels of velocity we're talking about here, but the ball's not fluttering around either.
I think understanding, hey, I can't make that throw there. I'll just check it down. Like, checking it down is not a sign of weakness. Like, you could just take a check down and live to play the next play and pick up 8 yards underneath, and now it's 2nd and 2. And the whole playbook is available to you at 2nd and 2, as opposed to driving it between 3 defenders, maybe pulling it off, but maybe also getting picked and returned to the house. So I'd like to see him clean that up a little bit, but the biggest thing I would like to see from Garrett Nussmeier this upcoming year is a willingness to take off and run. Last year, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I believe Garrett Nussmeier had about 15 scrambles last year. Like, thereabouts, right around 15 scrambles. There are some quarterbacks that have 15 scrambles in one game.
Yeah.
Nussmeier had that over the course of the entire season. He never...
Something else with Garrett and with LSU quarterbacks just in general is the weapons that they have around them sometimes is a positive and a negative. Because when you are throwing to the receivers that LSU has had over the last couple of years, you are willing to say, F it, I'll just throw it up. Or F it, I'll just put it in this, I'll make a questionable throw because I know he's probably going to come down with it, whoever it is. Right? On the other side of the token, because you have those weapons, you better be lighting it up. Like, you better be putting up numbers. You better be putting up big-time games.
Never wanted to really keep the defense
because
honest
you probably
with
won't
his
have
leg.
that.
Now, he did it a couple times. One in particular against Ole Miss, where they needed it, and he took off, and he got what was a key 3rd down conversion en route to the game-winning touchdown drive. So it's in there. He can do it. He's plenty athletic. He just didn't really show a real willingness to do it last year. So I would really like to see him grow in that area. But man, I am really bullish on this young man. He's in year 5 at the program, 2nd year as a starter, the unquestioned starter, obviously, at LSU, and one of the most talented quarterbacks in the entire SEC. So I think he's going to cause a lot of problems, assuming he can continue to grow and develop and continue to pull off those amazing throws and continue to hit teams downfield. But I think just a little bit better understanding of game management and willingness to take off and run would take him from a great player to an elite player. I don't think the gap's that wide, by the way.
Yeah, I think if he takes a step forward, I think if he continues his development, which again, like if you're in your 5th year, whatever Greg said, and you have the weapons around you and all of that at LSU, if he does take a step forward, I think he will be in that elite conversation because he's already very good. And he certainly has the tools. All right, and now we're going to check out PFF's breakdown of young Garrett.
5 is Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. So this guy sat on the bench for 3 years in Baton Rouge, and he finally had his chance to start this past year, and he really showed that, he had flashes of brilliance as a backup, and he was really good as a starter this past year. The 5th most passing yards in the nation with over 4,000. 7th in big-time throws with 26 big-time throws as well. Now, Garrett Nussmeier, still a little bit of a gunslinger right now. He had 18 turnover-worthy plays. That was in the bottom 20.
How about this hair? He's his brother? What happened?
20 in college football. Also does not add anything as a rusher, only 93 rushing yards this past year. But he's a tough quarterback. He's fearless in the pocket. He's capable of making almost any throw on the field as well. Again, he's a little bit of a gunslinger right now. And I've seen some comparisons to Tony Romo out there that I kind of like. But I still think Garrett Nussmeier, listen, he's one of the top quarterbacks to know for next year's draft, and I think he's one of the top quarterbacks in college football right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's certainly one of the top, and I would have him at 4 or 5 here as well. Number 5, I think, is a good placement for him. And you mentioned it, fearless when it comes to trying to make any throw on the field. Sometimes a little bit too fearless. You mentioned a gunslinger, the turnover-worthy plays. And I think the other thing that gets me with Nussmeier is once you get him beyond that first read and once things start to get late in the play and he has to improvise, there's just not a whole lot of that. There's not a ton of mobility. He's a classic pocket quarterback who needs to release the football in 3 seconds or less to really have success, right?
And we saw that in some of those highlights, right? Like, he's getting the ball out very quickly. He is operating very quickly, which isn't a negative. I mean, Romo had the fastest release in the NFL, maybe even in NFL history. He was getting the ball out quick. So in today's day and age, like, yeah, you want your quarterback to be able to run, but if they would rather be a pocket passer who's letting it rip, okay. I think Garrett can. I think he has he's not a statue back there. But, I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks who would prefer not to run.
Right, you're not going to get a whole lot of improv like you used to with Jayden Daniels. But when you talk about the load that was thrown at him last year, second most pass attempts in the country behind Kyle McCord, LSU maybe asked him to do a little bit too much, and he was still really successful when you look at what he could do on that offense without much of a running game, without their defense helping him really the last 2 years. That's been the case for LSU. So a lot of it's going to be supporting cast. 4 of his starting offensive linemen were taken in the NFL draft, so I do worry a little bit about pass protection here. But as far as Nussmeier goes, got an NFL.
I have a sneaky feeling LSU will have no problem reloading.
NFL arm. You can see NFL anticipation at times from the pocket, especially when he really locks in and wants to throw balls into those tight windows, which is pretty often. So, look, Nussmeier's got a high ceiling. He can put up huge numbers again this year. The question to me, more so than him, is about his supporting cast. It's going to be about this offensive line, some new receivers, Barryon Brown, Nick Anderson, guys like that LSU's bringing in. They lost Mason Taylor at tight end, who's
Well, you'll know also, like, it's one of those things where if Nussmeier does take a step back, you do have to wonder, like, okay, well, was he wholly reliant on those NFL level players around him? Was he wholly reliant on the offensive line, on Mason Taylor, on some of the wide receivers he's had? Like, what is that? You definitely don't want him to take a step back because he doesn't have that level of play or that level of playmaker around him.
He's a really valuable piece, obviously. So I just think when you look at Nussmeier, and there's even a couple other guys on this list we're going to talk about the same way, the next couple, it's what is around him, how much can they support him, because he's not going to be one of these dynamic athletes who's going to carry you like Jayden Daniels used to when things break down. When things break,
LSU, like Jayden Daniels had Brian Thomas. I think that does get over talked about in college, especially now, because every team has superstar players at that level. Every team has, studs, and they're going to have studs, and they're going to reload, and they're going to retool, especially at LSU. LSU's not going to have any problem going and getting their next great offensive lineman, their next great tight end, their next great wide receiver.
Break down, life gets a lot harder for him, right? And I love the way he throws through the pocket. I love the way his process. You could even see times, you mentioned 3 years as a backup, played sparingly, but you saw his process get a little bit better each year, right? So I think he's always going to have that gunslinger mentality.
Is this just a bottle of Tylenol? What is going on at Pro Football Focus? This guy's got a bottle of Tylenol on the desk. He's disheveled. Is this poor guy got the flu?
I think he kind of has to. That's the thing that could make him special, but I do worry a little bit about what's around him. LSU's gotten a lot of transfers in there this year, but they have to gel pretty quickly because I believe that they have a tough. Of course,
Clemson, right? Clemson to start.
A tough first game. They have to go to Clemson week 1.
Oh, that's a brutal first game.
You'll know, like, if Garrett looks overwhelmed. Clemson is a star-studded defensive front. If he looks overwhelmed, if he looks like he's running all over the place, making mistakes, taking sacks, turning the ball over, then you have concerns. If he holds up and lights up Clemson or looks good against Clemson or plays well in that game, you got to feel pretty good about the development and the step forward that he's going to take this season.
They with basically,
man, I didn't think about that. That offensive line against that defense
with a brand new offense around him, they got to go to Clemson week.
I think their defensive line has like 2 top 10. I think they have 2 top 10 prospects right now. And Cade Klubnik is my guy. I love Cade Klubnik. I think he's awesome.
That's right. That's going to be arguably the biggest game of week 1, or one of them, other than Ohio State, Texas.
When we do that preview, because we always do the matchup to watch on each side of the ball, it's absolutely can LSU's offensive line survive against Clemson? That might be the best D-line in the country, and that's the brand new offensive line going against that D-line.
And if he finds a way to go in there and win that game, all of a sudden the Garrett Nussmeier hype is going to be off the rails. So look, that's one of a few games, and we got a stacked week 1 this year, don't we? That's one of a few games in week 1 that I can't wait to watch. But no, Nussmeier, certainly the talent's all there, especially from the pocket. Just got to reel it in sometimes a little bit more, and hopefully LSU supporting cast can help him out.
I will say the offensive line is a major question mark, probably the biggest question mark for LSU going into next year, losing all those talented guys to the NFL draft, including Will Campbell, the number 4 overall pick. The receiving core I still think is really good, right? You got Aaron.
It's always going to be. Again, like, it's the same with like Ohio State, or it's like, oh man, Ohio State lost 3 wide receivers to the NFL. Oh, LOL, they just completely reloaded.
Anderson coming back for another year. You mentioned Barryon Brown. You mentioned Nick Anderson as well. You also have Trey'Dez Green, who was the top tight end coming out of high school last year and showed some really encouraging signs as a true freshman. So he's now your tight end as a true sophomore as well. So I think the receiving core, Caden Durham going to sophomore year as well, very talented running back. I think the supporting cast in terms of skill position players is really good. The offensive line is a big question right now. And I think, listen, Garrett is a tough quarterback in the pocket. He's capable of making throws under pressure, but you don't want him under pressure all the time. as well. So Garrett Nussmeier, number 5 on this list.
All right, there you go. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. I mean, the college football season is loaded. The matchup, that is a good thing about the current, like, I don't know if you want to call it like the new minor league system of how college football is, where it's basically like 3 conferences playing each other all the time, or the same like 30 teams, I guess. But you do get big time matchups, and you do get nonstop matchups. I mean, even Oklahoma and Texas, when they moved to the SEC, all of a sudden just casually getting Texas and Oklahoma on the schedule for SEC teams. And, so as a fan of big schools, you get big matchups. And this year will be one hell of a college football season, especially with all these great quarterbacks to watch. Sellers, Lagway, Nussmeier, Klubnik, Aller. Like, you got some real players out there. So, but taking a look at Nussmeier again, a lot to watch. His development. Can he take that step forward to being a legitimate Heisman candidate, a legitimate top 10 NFL draft pick, top 5 NFL draft pick, potentially the first overall draft pick? We'll see. But he's got a shot. He's got the tools. I like the Romo comp a lot. I see it. I think, like, when Romo almost like the ball like floated out of his hand. Like, it was just such a beautiful release. And that quick, effortless release. It wasn't he wasn't throwing the ball through a brick wall, but could make the throws. Romo, sneaky athletic. I think that's a perfect comp. I'm not going to trademark it. You can use it if you want, but we'll see what happens. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments below what you think. We'll try and crank up a whole lot more college football coverage as the season progresses and during the season. All right. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.